Week 7 is upon us. We're back with the Keep It a G Real podcast. Dropping a little bit of power rankings. We're starting to see what teams are shaping up to be teams that probably aren't going to be in any real push for contention for the playoffs. So now that I started to actually get further into the season, I'm starting to realize, make these videos a little bit shorter for you guys. If you could give me a little feedback in the comment section if you think the power ranking videos are a little bit too long. I noticed a lot of people in the past I followed, their power ranking videos are really quick. I feel like a lot of times, they don't go into detail as much. They kind of just get them out there and briefly tell you why. I wonder sometimes if I could be a little long-winded with talking about teams, but some teams have juicier stuff going on than other teams. I really, like to talk about the teams that I think have potential sometimes. It's looking like there's a handful of teams that are kind of in the basement. A few teams that could be in the basement but have the ability to maybe claw their way back. Not as many as those. But we'll get into the power rankings. And if these videos are a little bit too long, I try to shoot for like an hour, but we'll see. I don't have a lot to say about a lot of these bottom teams. So we'll just get right into it. So again, staying at 32, the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, they fired Matt Rule. The new coach threw Robbie Anderson out of the game, which was absolutely hilarious. He got shipped off to the Cardinals. I want to say something real quick about Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson is buns, and I agree with something Shannon Sharp said. He's like, you're not good enough. And as much as I hate the mainstream media shows, I do like them because I watch a lot of the characters. Some of the stuff that Shannon Sharp says about being a player and being in locker rooms, I like hearing that stuff because he's one of the all-time greats. He said at point blank the same thing I've been thinking this whole time. Robbie Anderson's trash, and you can't. It's one thing to act like an asshole or whatever, but you can't be bent out of shape and stuff and act like that towards people on the sideline when you ain't even good. He's got kind of like a little NBA Kent Bazemore thing going where dudes act like he's cooler than he really is. He's part of more of the hip NFL culture where he's kind of more popular than he is actually kind of good. And he's on I Am Athlete podcast acting like he deserves to be in the same room as some of those legends. Sorry, my cat's being stupid. But yeah, this team's bad on both sides of the ball. Like I said before, I think it's a good coaching gig. It's got some good young players. Let's see what players they ship off. So, Carolina, 32. Staying put at 31 is the Houston Texans. They're dead last in absolutely everything that matters. They're 29th in turnover or total defense. They're 30th in total offense. They got some young players on both sides of the ball I like, but this team needs to still be a little bit overhauled. Just this weird hodgepodge of players that need to be cut, veteran players, guys that really aren't that athletic, dudes that just can't play. So Houston, 31. I expect them to stay down here, fighting for the first overall pick. Chicago Bears, 2-4. So I was a little disappointed considering the start that they've gotten. Clearly, this team's just not talented enough. They lost to Washington, which I thought they were going to win that football game based off they've been, playing gritty defense at times. I do love their young defensive players, but this team is just, the offensive line is just absolute garbage. There's no weapons. The last two games, considering what's surrounding him, I think Fields is playing well. So they got a decision they got to make there. Preferably, I would keep him. Love Fields, love Jaquan Brisker, Jalen Johnson, Roquan Smith. They got a solid little core there, guys. Let's see what they go and do forward. This is definitely a team that's in the basement going forward. They just don't have enough juice to win games. They're going to play tough defense and just get outscored. So, Bears, 30. 29, staying put, Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I know that they won against a really good team, a team that's really beat up, really hopped on them and took advantage of them, played pretty tight defense. Could have a quarterback controversy on their hands. I do think, you should probably roll with Kenny Pickett. He's hurt. I don't know how hurt he is. I'm pretty sure this team plays the Eagles next, but this is a team that's not efficient through the air, not efficient on the ground, bad offensive line. Quarterbacks aren't good. One's not. We don't know what his potential is going to be yet. I do think he's got a better arm, more accurate than Trubisky. Sometimes bringing a different guy in, change of pace. I mean, it's not like Trubisky hasn't played in a lot of games. He's just not good. He's not throwing the football down the field when he needs to. He's kind of a punani in that regard. Defense is good enough to keep them in specific games if things go right. Tampa's really injured, so it's not a surprise that if the defense plays good enough, they can keep this game tight. Tom freaking out on the sideline and shit. Pittsburgh at 29. Detroit Lions, another team that I think everyone got excited about in the beginning. The only thing that's good about Detroit is they can score points. The problem with that is they're not consistent at scoring points. Not only are they not consistent, they're not that efficient at scoring points. They're either putting 25, 30 points up inefficiently or they're not putting up points at all. Defense is absolute garbage. It's fun, but it's not efficient, consistent offense. It's just a bad team. Detroit, 28. 27, the Washington Commanders. This is a really odd football team because Carson Wentz is still throwing touchdowns in most of these games. I just think he's making bad decisions when it matters. He's throwing 6 or 7 interceptions. Oddly enough, the tackles are playing well. Both of them are grading out in the 80s, if I recall. Offensive line's not bad on this team. I think this team suffers because it's good to have the ability to run when you need to. This team's just incapable of running the football at all. And when you have the pieces on the offense in theory to have a high-level passing attack, with it being inconsistent and then you not being able to layer in efficient runs, this offense just sputters at times. And then, I don't even know, defensively this team's just bad for the most part. I mean, they stopped Chicago last night or the other night. But Chicago doesn't have offensive talent. So I really think this team is, I don't know, this team, I don't see this, I see this team struggling to reach 500, honestly. Their division's a lot tougher now. The division has kind of been buns as of late, and now you got 3 teams sitting at one's undefeated, one's 5-1, one's 4-2. I don't see this team making any headway. Washington at 27. Down 1. And the only reason why I don't put them behind these other teams is because on paper, this is actually a really good roster. It's just very disjointed. Russ had a really good first half last night and then had a really bad second half. Sorry, my cat won't leave my stuff alone. I think anyone that thought this team was going to be bad is lying. I would be honest with you that I didn't expect this team to be 2-4 through 6 games. And then a lot of people act like Russ is absolute garbage when he's been fantastic his whole career. Yeah, I don't know. This team's just bad play calling on both sides of the football, just really disjointed at all levels, offense, defense, special teams. Talent on both sides of the ball. One thing I will say is the defense, they've given up big plays here and there, but for the most part, this defense has been, holding really tough. I'd like to see, I haven't looked and see what the numbers are, but I feel like some of these games they've held teams to, single digits, kind of like bending, don't breaking, but, that's about all they got going for them. But in the league where the high-powered offenses are king, and when you get into the playoffs, defense only does so much against these high-powered offenses, hoping to only slow teams down. There's a good chance this team's dead in the water. If they're going to turn the shit around, they got to turn it around now. Denver 26. Here's another team, that has a high-powered offense when they're fully healthy again. Dudes getting nagging injuries on this team. The defensive side of football is absolutely atrocious. This is another team that can put up a lot of points when they're fully healthy. At 1-4 now, I just don't see this team in that division clawing its way back. I do think that the Chargers are the real deal. It's another team that's playing really well with injuries. I think that if the Broncos get their shit together and play to the best of their ability, their roster is just better on both sides of the ball. Las Vegas 4-1. This is a team that has potential to make a run maybe, but they would have to have a crazy offensive variance to sustain it for multiple weeks. I do think they'll probably end up finishing last in this division. Even though I value offense, this offense is not consistent enough, and I think people aren't honest about how talented this offense is. Waller's great, but he's hurt all the time. Renfro's solid. You have one of the best wide receivers in the league, but this offensive line is absolute garbage. Derek Carr, And this is kind of a theme I want to talk about, and not necessarily that I have to talk about it overtly, but I'd like to hear what you guys' thoughts in the chat, and I'll ask it a couple times. If you were building a team, would you rather have if you had an elite quarterback or a really good quarterback, and would you rather have a bad offensive line, or would you have really bad weapons? And you see some of these teams right now have good offensive lines and really good quarterbacks, but they don't got a lot of juice down the field. They get all this time in the pocket. Not for much. Players still got to separate. Players still got to beat players one-on-one, run after the catch. I don't know. It's an interesting conversation to have. This Raiders team has a terrible offensive line. Still been able to score some points in these games. And then you look at the Packers, who we'll talk about later, who have one of the best offensive lines in the league, but have absolutely no juice down the field. Aaron Rodgers might as well throw to high schoolers. But we'll get to that. This Raiders team's not good. Raiders at 25. 24, down 3, New Orleans Saints. Now, the New Orleans Saints, again, is something I've talked about for years. New Orleans Saints is one of these teams that's talented on both sides of the ball. They are dealing with a lot of injuries, but this team's only going to go as far as the quarterback goes. They played the Bengals really tough over the weekend, primarily because their defense is really good, and they did score a lot of points with some of their young, athletic players. Who's to say that over the weekend, had they not gotten good enough quarterback play, the game could have been closer. They could have won maybe. But they just couldn't keep up with the Bengals' output. I actually do love this roster. I just think they need to get a little stronger at certain points on the roster. One, obviously, being quarterback, and obviously they got to get healthy. And I also think some of their offensive weapons are getting a little long in the tooth. Alvin Kamara, he's still good, but he's injury prone, gets in trouble and shit. He's also a running back, so it's like whatever. And Mike Thomas, not the fastest, most athletic guy. That shit usually goes first. Pretty sure he's injured again. So Saints at 24. Down 6 to 23, the Arizona Cardinals. So this team has the inverse effect of some of these teams that have solid rosters. This team does not lack athleticism and explosiveness. I just think this team lacks consistency on both sides of the ball and experience on both sides of the ball. Not sure if the coach is going to stick around after this one. I know they signed Kyler Murray to that long-term deal. I do believe that, if he does his homework and studies, obviously that's beaten like a drum. I feel like he has the skill set and the capabilities to play in any offense, really. Unless you're asking him to pick up linebackers, which, you got to ask quarterbacks that every game. He's not that great against the blitz. I mean, this team's probably going to be like a 500 team once they get D-Hop back. Getting D-Hop back to really open this up this offense. They had Robbie Anderson. I don't know what his salary is, but, that dude can only run 3 routes. Send him on those 3 routes and, let the rest of the actual really good wide receivers work underneath. I'm sure Robbie Anderson will never hear this, but I've literally just been shitting on him this whole podcast. He's ass. The only thing worse than his game is his fucking hair. Arizona 23. Down 4 to 24, Cleveland Browns. So the Cleveland Browns, again, is another really ultra-talented team. You can make an argument outside of quarterback. This is one of the best rosters on football. They're deep at defensive back. Their linebackers are fast and athletic, can cover. Their defensive line's nasty. They're, getting really good solid play out of Amari Cooper. Obviously, they have a juggernaut running the ball. I honestly think this team's coached well. They get a drop because obviously they're down to 2-4, and Russ is more stuff's piling on Watson. I wrote Watson with question marks. Is Watson done? He's got more chicks coming out of the woodwork. Funny little tidbit. I was like sitting at work and I was bored and I was listening to as I was doing my work, Shannon Sharp talking about Shannon Sharp's got to be careful about how he talks about these instances with guys getting in trouble with stuff revolving in sexual shit or quote unquote sexual shit with women. And I say quote unquote because Shannon Sharp's been a big proponent in the past of, kind of taking the side of dudes all the time, which, I think people have lied on both sides of that conversation. I think that all those assault charges and those assault cases that fall on those sexual assault lines, I think there's a lot of gray areas for those. There's a lot of way for people to lie on both sides of those scenarios and finagle, and people are trying to settle and, take into account the fact people want money, but you got to be careful. The woke mob will come after you. Shannon Sharp, Gotta be careful how you talk now. He said something like, I'm disappointed in Deshaun for putting himself in those situations for those people to say things against him. So you don't believe he was acting like a creep? And that's fine if you don't believe he was acting like a creep, but there's really good evidence saying that he is a freaking creep. I mean, obviously, how many women have come out and done this stuff or said these things about him, and now more are stepping up. I think it's interesting the way Shannon Sharp's worded, because he's one of those dudes that's like, he's like, Skip, if I see a woman on the elevator all alone, he goes, I take a different elevator, I wait for her to go up. He goes, I'm not even going to put myself in a situation where a woman could say I did something to her when I didn't. And all this other stuff, blah, blah, blah. Which, I get it because people lied. But be careful, man. The woke Bible come get you, Shannon Sharp, talk about Deshaun Watson like that. So I thought that was interesting. But who knows what's going on with Watson. This team ain't going to be able to optimize, its skill set and what it can do on both sides of the ball unless they get him back. And there's a chance they might not even be able to hold on anyway. So Cleveland at 22. Atlanta Falcons, what can I say about these next two teams? We'll start with Atlanta. Atlanta's super interesting. Well-coached team. To beat the 49ers, which is hilarious, but, Garoppolo threw 2 INTs. And they did a good job stopping the run. And we'll talk about that later, but, the key to stopping that 49ers teams for a reason that, if you're really watching what's going on with these players, the key to stopping that 49ers team is stopping the run, first and foremost, because that's their point of attack. And a lot of shit falls apart for them if you can stop their run in that scheme. Defense hasn't been great, but it's stepped up in a couple of these key games to keep them 3-3. They got high-level Marcus Mariota. He was really efficient, didn't make any mistakes. They got some fun young players. They got Tyler Algier coming out of the backfield. I forget the other kid's name there, the other running back that's playing well for them due to injuries, but I liked Tyler Algier coming out of BYU, just a well-rounded, serviceable back. Fun players in the air, and Drake London and what's his name out of Florida, the tight end, who early on they weren't really utilizing him as much as they should. And for some reason, I always forget his name. I'm bad with names now, and I always get these players. I see them in my head, but I can never remember names. But Drake London, tall, 6'5", 220, rangy receiver. Can take underrated speed. He can kind of go over the top, but he's kind of like a big slot. Catches everything, underrated run after the catch. Just a really good pick for them, and I think he's really helped open up their offense. It's Kyle Pitts. I always forget his name. Kyle Pitts, 6'6", 240, run the whole route tree at tight end. I really think down the road this team's interesting. They really need to suss out who their future quarterback is. But they're coached well, playing just good enough to get themselves a 3-3, and this is just a tough, scrappy team. The defense flies around the football. Very inefficient defense. They give up a lot of points, but fly around, boomer bust plays. I love some of the young secondary players, so Atlanta at 21. Seattle Seahawks at 20, similar. Seattle Seahawks, this team is very similar to the Saints. They have one of the worst defenses, but it played defense last week. They got to the quarterback and they forced a lot of third down stops. They kept their opponent to 4 out of 16 third down conversions. They didn't give up any touchdowns, forcing the opposing team to just kick field goals. And then the X factor is you get Geno Smith with an 85 rating so far in the season. A little renaissance out there. Offensive line's playing a little bit better than people thought it would. Just enough for Geno to operate, do his thing. He's doing a good job getting the ball to his weapons. Seattle Seahawks at 20. Shit's crazy. So people won't like this because I see a lot of places with their opinions just jacking this team up. I don't think right now this team is that explosive and hasn't shown me that it's consistent enough to be any higher than where it is now. Colts, they moved up 4 slots, kind of out of proxy based off what some of the other teams did. They're 3-2-1. Colts, Matt Ryan did a good job last week spreading the pill around to his weapons. Michael Pittman proves that he has the ability to be a high-level number one, but he's not consistent enough for me. And I don't know if that's just not the right quarterback meshing. Matt Ryan doesn't have the arm, but, I think he had over 100 yards and a couple tubs over the weekend. Defense to me is a little soft, a little bit inconsistent, leaky at times, just not really all that cohesive and get them into trouble in some of these games. But they somehow put 34 points up over the weekend, which is hilarious because I really don't think this offense is all that good, especially without their number one player at running back, this man you see on the screen here. But, I'm going to have to see more out of this team to really elevate them, Like I've said this time and time again, this team is designed to get a bunch of wins in the regular season, and when they go up against the teams that match up well against them in the playoffs, they didn't even fucking make the playoffs last year. They lost to Jacksonville in the final game. I really think his team's overrated. They're gonna have to go on a run here to prove me otherwise, to leap ahead of some of these other teams. Colts at 19. New England Patriots. A lot of people are jacking the Patriots up really high too. We got a small little sample size here with Bailey Zappi, he was what, a 4th round pick or something like that out of like fucking Western Kentucky Polytechnical Institute, something. Playing really efficient, making great decisions with the football. Was really accurate last week, 24-34, 309 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's got the accuracy, making good reads. He's got good vision, good anticipation on his throws. 75% completion rate through 2 games. Again, I do think a lot of teams will score a fuck ton of points on this defense most of the time because I really feel like this defense is old and leaky. But yeah, Bill Belichick's still a phenomenal coach. If you can keep this out of Bailey Zappi in that division, they could probably rise. But, I don't know, man. I'm not into it. Still not into it. I got to see more of these New England Patriots. Patriots 18. But you want to know what? Here's Jacksonville down 2, which bums me out. Number 17, Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville. I wrote God in my notes. Like, they lost to the Colts. Not the best game from this team. They gave up 34 points to that offense. They don't even got their best player. Kind of a little bit of a lull, in my opinion, here. I think they ran the ball a little too much in this game. They were effective on the ground. Trevor Lawrence ran 2 touchdowns in. They were effective, but I just think that they should have taken more pass attempts. Lawrence went 20 of 22 for 165. Like, how are you not being this effective on the ground and not throwing the ball down the field, the play action pass? I don't know who was calling this fucking game. Travis Etienne, 10 carries for 86 yards. That's 8.6. Some random Jermichael Hasty had 3 rushes for 19 yards. James Robinson, 4.5 yards on the ground. I don't know. All their dudes were healthy. They didn't take shots down the field. Like, I don't know what the fucking game plan was. And it's, they still scored 27. It's not like, this Colts defense is playing all that great. I don't know, man. Bad game plan, maybe. You got to take shots down the field, man. Especially when you run the ball that well. Jacksonville at 17. Here they are, the New York Jets. Jets, Jets. Jets sit at 4-2 up 6, baby. Let's go, dude. A team that I picked to be a sleeper team. And, I picked it because I felt it in my bones. Looked early on like they wouldn't be now. We got to see if it's sustainable. They did have kind of a perfect storm of a game where they rushed the ball very, very well, played good enough defense, and the quarterback didn't have to do all that much. And so that's kind of my look going forward is the Jets. We got to see at some point, what the deal is out here with the second-year quarterback. We got to see and put him into situations like they beat the Packers, but let's be real. And we'll talk about it when we get to them. The Packers on paper are a top 10 team on paper. The one spot that they lack is explosivity, and they showed it in this football game. Wilson went 10 of 18, 110 yards, but they got Breece Hall rushed for over 100 yards. Carter rushed for 6.8 a carry. They really just beat up this Green Bay defense. That's another thing. We'll get to Green Bay is like, on paper, this Green Bay defense is stacked, but they're not playing as well as they should play. I don't know what the deal is with them. I don't know if they got a lot of injuries, but yeah, so this Jets team, defense is playing well. Love the young team. Rushing variance, 200 plus rushing yards on the ground. I will need to see out of Wilson's what I wrote in my notes. Got a lot of young talent and depth. Love this Jets team at 16. Number 15, up one, the Tennessee Titans. So the Titans, they're winning using their identity. They're starting to realize that based off the personnel that they have to play a more balanced style of football. When it comes to play action pass, Ryan Tannehill has shown over the years he's one of the more accurate quarterbacks when it comes to play action. Derrick Henry's starting to find his groove. So they had a bye, but when you go back, and it's going to be good for Derrick Henry because I'm not a firm believer, and we'll get to it at a certain point. I wrote down efficiency, in my opinion, when it comes to running, is just way more important than volume. This old adage that, you just got to fucking keep running it into a fucking brick wall and eventually one pops. I think that's kind of stupid. They gave Henry 28 catches, carries for 102 yards in the last game they played. He only averaged 3.5 yards a carry, 3.6 yards per carry. I'd like to see them throw it a tad bit more. But the defense is starting to play a little better, starting to find balance. It's a little hard when you have the wide receivers they have. Their wide receiver core is not that great, but Titans are starting to find their groove. This is a team, to me, that can go either way. Could they I feel like both sides of the ball, they don't have enough juice to be really good. But I do think they could be similar to how they've been, a team that, could possibly win or, win the division or be a wild card team and just be a competitive team. 15, Tennessee. So staying put at 14 is Miami Dolphins, and yes, they did lose over the weekend. But I'm keeping these guys right where they are for the sole fact that they don't have Tua right now. Tua's accuracy is a big reason why this team has been so good early on. And I just think that this team is kind of, as good as this team is, again, this team is just fledgling without, the accuracy and the efficiency that you would get from Tua Tagovailoa. I guess he's supposed to be coming back this week. I'm not sure, and I don't even know who they play. But they ran into a good team in Minnesota who, in my opinion, Minnesota played one of their better games over the weekend. Now, they didn't have Tua, but Minnesota played a little bit similarly to how I think they should play. This Miami Dolphin team, offensive line's improved. They got a bunch of different running backs. They know how to scheme up the run plays to get the best out of them. Obviously, they got weapons and spades through the air. They got a deep defense. Front seven's underrated. Linebackers a little underrated. Good DBs. So I'm going to keep Miami where they're at. Miami at 14. Staying where they're at, Los Angeles Rams 13. I don't know what to really say about the Rams. This is a team that on paper is very talented. And again, this plays into the question I will ask again. If you had a really good quarterback, what would you rather have? A bad offensive line or bad weapons? Because this team doesn't have bad weapons, but their offensive line is just ungodly bad right now. And I think it's a big reason why, it's throwing off a lot of the timing of their pass plays. I just feel like Matt Stafford's not focused. He's under pressure a lot. Just the timing of the plays. Everything feels a little bit off from this team. And it doesn't help that, they paid Allen Robinson. And he hasn't shown up. I don't even know if he's got a touchdown. I wrote, phew, they beat the Panthers, LOL. But this team still don't look great. Their talent as a whole is what's managed to keep them at 500. This is another team where I could see them battling back and maybe being a wild card team, but we're going to have to see something out of this team because it's tough sledding right now. What was it? Sorry about that. I'll sneeze real quick. So Rams at 13. Green Bay Packers down 4. So, again, one of the better rosters in the league. But right now, again, just like I said about Stafford, with the offensive line, you got the inverse problem here, the Green Bay Packers, offensively. I've never seen a wide receiver core omit as little production as this team. And, I've never seen a wide receiver core be so bad. Well, no. not to like nitpick or whatever, and people shouldn't care, Giants fans, because I know a bunch of Giants fans. The Giants wide receiver cores have been ass for the past handful of years. But, like the Giants have a couple players that have when they're healthy, have a little electricity, can do some things, some athletic stuff, even though they're not playing well. But this team is just like, they drop balls, they run bad routes, they're just not clutch. Of course, they draft Christian Watson, who's overrated, and he fucking can't get open, and when he does get open, he drops fucking footballs. The inexperience, talent, and explosiveness, lack of those three things at wide receivers, fucking killing this team. And this team would probably be 4-2, maybe 5-1 had they actually had some fucking weapons through the. They're just going to keep running the ball. Right now they're banking on running, having close games, and then Rodgers taking over and making plays and just being perfect with bad weapons. So my question to you guys is, what would you rather have? Because Rodgers has one of the best offensive lines in the league. It's like elite across the board. Would you rather have a really good offensive line or really bad weapons? So it's interesting because we're seeing a handful of teams that are on the opposite ends of that spectrum. And the big thing is defense. The defense isn't holding either. This defense needs to tighten up the fucking bolts. Too talented on defense to be playing this bad. Green Bay at 12. Number 11, the New York Giants. Let's go. Where are my notes for the Giants? Oh, Giants. So this team is probably one of the most interesting teams in the league. On paper, they're not as talented as some of the teams behind them, but there's some, like I said, there's something to be said for coaching and managing games. They've been winning games close. And there's something to be said for that. Situational football, play calling, all that stuff's been great for them. Special teams has been absolutely fantastic. I do think against some of the better teams in the league that have really good air attacks, have a little more well-rounded rosters, this team would be a little bit limited. Daniel Jones has played better the last 2 weeks. I'm interested to see what their matchups are down the road. If I recall, the rest of their schedule is soft, which is great for this team because sitting at 5-1, and you already made it through some of your tough games that people thought you were going to lose, me included. When you come out the other end 5-1, this team has the potential, if they could keep it together, not get injured, to be, a solid wild card team. I do definitely think that's probably where the buck would stop. Similar to like last year when the Eagles weren't really at their peak, like they were really good. I think this Giants team is like maybe a season 2 away of being really, really good. I know that sounds shitty because they're 5-1, but they're a 5-1 with deficiencies on the off. Like their interior offensive line's not that great. Their wide receiving core is not that great. I do like their young tight end. Kind of have only like one running back, and a lot of your offense hinges on that guy staying healthy. But defensively, I love the fucking defensive line on this team. Their defensive line, their average grade on the defensive line is like 80, 84 or some shit like that. Like the lowest grade's a 70, 76, and that's Thibodeau. And like if you come in your rookie year and you have a 76 grade, that's really good, especially at that position. Linebackers run around, fucking smack people. They're athletic. Secondaries improved. I think they picked up Landon Collins. That'll help them a little more, bolster the run game. Not that great in pass coverage. But, yeah, this team plays tough. They manage the clock well. Interested to see. I want to take a peek. I want to take a peek at who they play coming up because depending on their schedule, man, this team could be looking at a wild card spot. So we got the Jaguars. It's a tough game, but it's a winnable game. The Seahawks is a tough game, but a winnable game. They'll beat the Texans. They'll beat the Lions. Cowboys, team they lost to, but they probably could beat the Cowboys. They should beat the Commanders. They'll probably lose the Eagles. Should beat the Commanders. would be a good game with them and the Vikings. If you catch the Vikings, is that a primetime game? You catch Vikings at the right time, that's a winnable game. I think they'd beat the Colts. Probably this team might, listen, people, this Giants team, man. If Dayball keeps scheming and coaching the way he's coaching, man, if this Giants team makes it into the wild card, Dayball should be coach of the year this year. Mark my words. If this Giants team makes it into the wild card round, Dayball should win coach of the year. That's all I got to say. Giants at 11. Staying put at 10, Dallas Cowboys. The reason why I have Dallas over the Giants is because I just think they are more talented, and obviously it's not so much about the win that they have over them, even if they hadn't played yet this season, which usually doesn't happen by week 6. They usually play earlier every time. I would still say that on paper, this Dallas team's 4-2 with their backup quarterback. I'm not one of these people that was like wicked freaking out. I said as soon as I heard Dak was going to be out for a handful of weeks, it was, can they get enough out of the quarterback to keep it afloat, which they did. Supposedly Dak's coming back next week. Again, this is still a good football team. Say what you want about the Eagles game, but I don't consider that to be that big of an ass whooping. That game was closer than people think. That game was only a handful of plays at different times away from it being a closer game and the Giants being in the mix and the Dallas Cowboys being in the mix. Like the play where CeeDee Lamb got wide open and Cooper Rush missed him and turned it an interception. As efficient as Dak is, if he was in that game, that would have been a catch, and CeeDee Lamb would have just had the safety to beat. That would have changed the whole landscape of that game. So I think that game was a lot closer than people think. Do I think that Dallas is a better team on paper than the Eagles? No, I do not. I've consistently had the Eagles at 1 or 2 this whole season, and the Eagles should be the favorites to beat this team again when they play each other again. But this team leads the NFL in pressures and sacks, sack differential. They're top 5 in pass defense and in scoring defense. Again, really, really good defense. What helps this secondary, and I think a big reason why the secondary is playing a lot better, is because these guys are literally having to triple team Micah Parsons. Almost every single play, they're triple teaming him, chipping him with tight ends and running backs and fullbacks and shit. I think that was Cooper Rush. Obviously, that was Cooper Rush's worst game. People also forget he threw 3 interceptions, and it was still a closer game than people think. So I'm gonna leave the Dallas Cowboys right where they are at 10. With the Giants nipping on their heels. Dallas at 10. All the way down 4-9, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Buccaneers, they've been in a lot of close games. Yes, they've had a lot of injuries. I don't know if the reason why Brady's stats are all down on average as a whole is because of all the injuries. He's had some injuries in the offensive line. Injuries at wide receiver. I do think this football team is still a very good football team, and I definitely think it's the injuries that's made it so they've lost to some of the teams they lost to. I do think this team should probably be 4-2, but they're sitting at 3-3. Still a really solid football team, would beat most teams. Let's see, I don't know who's on pace to come back or what for this team, but they've just had nagging injuries and career-ending injuries for a lot of important players. So, yeah, Tampa Bay, number 9. Number 8, the Baltimore Ravens. So the Ravens are still one of the best teams in the league. Their problem is they keep laying eggs late. They beat almost everyone they play against until later. For some reason, in the fourth quarter, they have fucking meltdowns. I felt like in their loss to the Giants, they outplayed the Giants for most of the game and then let them back at the end in the end and just couldn't, close out defensively. But this team is third in yards per play with 6.3 yards. Still high-level coaching. They're top 3 in takeaways. And I also wrote down they keep losing in the fourth quarter. They're just not closing games out. So particularly on the back end, they need to tighten things up on the back end of their defense. Yeah, they get a lot of takeaways, but I also think that at times it's their back end that can give them issues and give stuff up. Yeah, the Baltimore Ravens are going to be a playoff team, in my opinion. Lamar's absolutely dynamic. If he could just, keep being this consistent, he's on pace to be in the running, in my opinion, for MVP, especially if they can get a higher win percentage. They're sitting at 3-3 right now, but he's played great, in my opinion. I think it's the defensive woes. It's what's wrong with this team. It's just not that efficient. I think a lot of times they chase big plays. A lot of times more than just playing straight up defense. You look at the personnel in this defense, this is like no way that this defense can't be one of the top tier defenses. Baltimore at 8. Number 7, the Bengals up 2, sitting at 3-3. So the Bengals have one of the most underrated defenses in the league. They don't give up any touchdowns at all so far in the second half. Lowest completion percentage against quarterbacks. And like I said, again, I think a lot of people don't pay too much attention to the Bengals defense, and then you look at the box score and you're like, oh man, this team's only lost by a few field goals here and there. This team doesn't give up a lot of points. It's just a really deep defense. Got a lot of young players stepping up. Dax Hill made a real good play over the weekend. A couple good plays over the weekend. Rolled in against a really good secondary over the weekend and put up points on a really good secondary. Now that T. Higgins is back, hopefully he stays healthy. I think that's him being in and out of drives and him being in and out of games is what's kind of stifled the defense. Teams are going to sit back and play like cover 3 and cover 4 when it's just Lamar and Tyler Boyd. It's easier to just sit on the back pedal, and put more guys in the box to go after, Joe Mixon. But now with T. Higgins back, he did a really good job operating the middle field and had some key first down plays. And played well enough to where it was harder for them to double team Jamar Chase, and Jamar was just amazing after the catch. They did a good job putting him on, not mismatches, but getting him in motion and putting him on guys one-on-one, throwing short passes so he can take advantage of, the weaker, not as athletic defensive backs. Slower, like Paulson Adebo. He had a nice play on Paulson Adebo. Paulson's just too slow to stay with him, but as much as I do like the player, one of the best defenses in the league. Offensive line starting to play a little bit better. Burrow's playing a lot better. Super efficient the last 2 games. So now let's see if this team can go on a run and maybe crack the top 5. I'm still a little skeptical about them obviously being inconsistent. Only lost by a combined, fucking 11 points or some shit. But let's see what they can do. They're in position here to get moving and pick up some steam. A couple tough games coming up here for the Bengals, though. And then down the stretch, we play the Bills at some point. It might be the final game of the season. I'm not sure. But hopefully yesterday was a start of getting guys healthy and things clicking. Defense is going to hold. Offense needs to show up. Bengals at 7. Number 6, Minnesota Vikings sitting at 5-1. So, obviously, Minnesota Vikings, people have kind of said they're similar to the Giants. But they're more explosive. I kind of tend to agree with that. I do think, they have a better quarterback in Kirk Cousins, who does a really good job of reading defenses and spreading the pill around. You got one of the best wide receivers in the league. You got one of the better veteran wide receivers in the league. They can run the football, they can throw the football. They got a wide array of targets to throw it to. My only issue's been with this team this whole entire time is this team's given up a lot of points to teams it shouldn't give up points to, and a lot of that is because they haven't gotten good pressure on the quarterback. In my opinion, they need to close games out. Need to play better defense. They need to be more physical up front. But this is one of the better teams in the National Football League right now. They built themselves a pretty solid offensive line. I don't know who the general manager is of this team, but he's put together a pretty solid team. I just think, I just got to tighten it up a little bit. So, Swaggy Kirk, Minnesota Vikings at 6. Los Angeles Chargers. A lot of people ain't going to like this. Los Angeles Chargers up to number 5. And I actually got that number wrong because I moved them up to 7 originally. And I started thinking a little bit more. And this team's 4-2 in a division, with the Chiefs in it, where we thought that the Broncos would be a lot better. But you got to understand, this team's 4-2, and they have a lot of injuries, this Chargers team. They don't have Keenan Allen. They don't have their best left tackle or their left tackle and Rashawn Slater. They did just get Khalil Mack back, who had a really good impact on the game last night. But yeah, I love this team. Herbert plays through injuries. He's composed. Just a really sharp player. They can run the ball. They can pass the ball. There's not a lot this team really can't do, in my opinion. I do think they give up points a little bit at times, although they played pretty well defensively last night. But this team just playing really, really good with a plethora of injuries. Hopefully they get their guys back. And I feel like if this team gets their players back, then they could be off to the races and battle the Chiefs maybe for the number one spot. So, yeah, Los Angeles Chargers are my fifth best team. So staying put, regardless of the loss, is the San Francisco 49ers. Here's another team that's playing with a lot of starters out of the game. And they got pounced on and took advantage of. And like a lot of people like to people talk shit at different times about the Rams last year, or talk shit at different times about the Bills last year. And people talk shit about the Chiefs. And like, I think people like freak out and act like, even the best teams don't lose games. This is the best 3-3 team, in my opinion. This team is 3-3 in a tough division, and they have tons of starters out. Pretty sure they're supposedly getting a couple of their starters back this coming week, and then a couple or the others are on pace to come back in a couple weeks or something like that. But when you shut down the run on this team, that's what makes this offense click, is the run. Because guess what? There's a difference between Jimmy Garoppolo playing within the system when the system's running well and asked to do certain things and just be efficient. There's a difference between that and then asking Jimmy Garoppolo to beat you. And Jimmy Garoppolo did not play good over the weekend. You shut the run down, you get out on this team, pounce on them early, force Jimmy Garoppolo to beat you. That's the best way you beat this team. Force Jimmy Garoppolo to beat you. They're still going to play defense for the most part, although, they didn't play great defense against the Falcons. But, great coaching job by the Falcons. Get out, shut down the run, force Jimmy Garoppolo to beat you, because Jimmy Garoppolo probably 7 times out of 10 is not going to beat you. And he has a proven track record in the playoffs that he's not a clutch player. Not to shit on him, because he's actually played way better the past 2 seasons. Most of it is because he's in the system. When the system's clicking, he's not really asked to do all that much, and the system works. Okay? It's a very quarterback-friendly system. I feel like if this whole team could stay healthy and they actually had a really good quarterback, this team would probably be fucking unstoppable. This team would probably be undefeated. So hopefully they get all their players back, they get healthy. I'm interested to see how far this team goes. Hopefully Garoppolo cannot throw turnovers like he did last week. I'm still going to keep San Francisco at 4. If you hate it, suck it. 3, Kansas City Chiefs sitting at 4-2. They're going to go down 2. So it's been hard up here at the top with these top three teams, because I feel like at any time I could scramble them around. Then I feel like for a little while I probably will be scrambling around unless the Eagles stay undefeated or do something to prove to me. Honestly, even though they won, I still think the Eagles would struggle against both these teams. I think both the Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs can beat the Eagles. What's there not to like about the Chiefs? They're first in touchdowns. I really think I feel like the pressure from the Bills was just really, really good over the weekend. They did a good job getting Mahomes, flush him out of the pocket. And Mahomes just made some mistakes down the stretch and lost late, It's hard. You never know how these games are going to go when 2 teams are just so evenly matched. Kansas City gets knocked down a touch because they're fully healthy, and they lost to the Bills, a team who's playing very well, and they're not fully healthy. The Bills are missing a lot of players. They're missing offensive linemen. They're missing depth at corner. Their best corner's not even playing. Kansas City, number 3. I don't have much to say about Kansas City. They're literally one of the best teams in the league. In like 5 weeks, they could be number 1 again for me. But I'm going to knock them back to 3 again like they were the other week. So Kansas City, number 3. Number 2, staying put, the Philadelphia Eagles, 6-0. Lo and behold, everyone's going to fucking freak out because you already know who number 1 is. Philly's got one of the best defenses in the league right now. Holding opposing quarterbacks to passer rating of 67 passer rating, albeit they haven't really played that good quarterbacks. They have 13 rushing touchdowns, leading the league. They lead the league. They're like their top 3 in the league in takeaways. Front seven's gnarly. Linebackers are fast and athletic. Their defensive core is deep. And they also got a soft schedule from here on in. So I expect this, train to keep on rolling on down the tracks. Again, the reason why I think that they can lose the Chiefs in Buffalo is because I'm interested to see this team win a shootout. They haven't had to win a shootout. And regardless of how good this defense is playing, when the Chiefs and the Bills, teams like that, roll into town, and there's a few other teams that can roll into town and score points on you, no matter how good your defense is playing. So it's interesting to see if Hurts can win those games. Hurts has proven that he's been efficient so far through 6 games. He's making smart decisions with the football. But that's when they got a lead and everything's flowing and the offense is going well. They did a good job putting the right players around him. All of his weapons are really good at running after the catch. He's not having to take a lot of shots down the field. And when he does, it's because he's got really good schemed up one-on-one matchups and guys that can go win at the point of attack in the air. So love Jalen Hurts. Love what the Eagles are doing. But they're number 2 for me. Number 1, the sitting at 5-1, the Buffalo Bills. Again, what we've seen from the Bills over the weekend, the Bills do this most of the time out. They had almost a flawless game, in my opinion, against Kansas City. They forced turnovers. What you've seen from the Bills, and Allen wasn't even as efficient as he can be, and, they still went out here through 24 points up on the Chiefs. Got a really good pass rush. They're number 1 in point differential, yard differential. Josh Allen's a fucking beast. Diggs is a fucking beast. They're first and third down percentage. They rolled into Arrowhead and just took this game from these guys and pushed turnovers. And again, don't listen to the media and all these dudes that act alike again. And this goes for anyone that talks to me about football too. Stop acting like the Bills can't run the fucking football. Just because they don't run it as much as you guys would like it doesn't mean they're not efficient. Devin Singletary, 7 carries for 85 yards, 5 yards a carry. Josh Allen can run the football. They got a lot of different guys that can run the football in the backfield. This offense, the offensive coordinator, I don't know their offensive coordinator's name, but they know they do a good job running the football when they're supposed to. And everyone needs to stop bitching about Josh Allen run the football, get hurt, all this other stuff. Hasn't gotten hurt yet. A lot of other dudes that ran the football a lot, like Cam, Mike Vick, a lot of these other guys, they were already getting hurt at this point in the career. Should he be? Do I get a little scared when he tries to hurdle dudes and stuff? Yeah. If the quarterback goes down, there's a good chance the ship sinks. But he's so dynamic. You just gotta trust this dude. I guess. I just feel like you're fucking out there living out a fucking prayer, dude. It's like some Jesus take the wheel shit when that dude takes off running with the football. But he's fantastic. This offense is really deep. The offensive line plays really well. Their wide receiving core is deep. He just spreads the pill all over the place. Stephon Diggs, 10 catches, 148 yards. He completed the ball to 1,000 different dudes. Davis, 3 catches, 74 yards, a touchdown. Dawson Knox, 3 catches, 37 yards, touchdown. Singletary had 4 catches. Reggie Gilliam had 3 catches. Khalil Shakir had a catch. Isaiah McKenzie had 2 catches. Who the hell's Tommy Sweeney? I don't know, but he had a catch. Defense against arguably the best offense in the league, depending on who you ask, and possibly the most capable offense in the league when they play the best of their ability, played really, really well. Teron Johnson, proven he's not just, this slot corner guy. He can play all over the field, plays really well. Young rookie, Khalil Elam, playing really, really well. Jordan Poyer playing well. They don't even have Micah Hyde. They just got so many dudes that are injured. They don't have their best corner, Tre'Davious White. This team's 5-1 with some of their best players being injured. So if you don't like it, Bills number 1, you can kick rocks. Again, this is another one of those teams where I say you talk shit about them, go beat them. Most of your teams can't. Bills 5-1. So yeah, if you guys, write down in the comments, please give me some feedback. Man, the time flies. We're at week 7. The season's been, to me, wild. A lot of teams sitting around 500. Only a few teams showing right now. A handful of teams that are really, really bad. But a lot of these other teams that, you think could be bad are still battling. Like, who would have thought some of these teams would have been 3-3 given the talent that's on these teams like Atlanta and Seattle. So it's going to be interesting now with that extra playoff game, too, to see who the fuck makes the playoffs. But yeah, and like I said, the theme, and I asked it a handful of times, if you had a good roster and you had a really good quarterback, would you rather want high-powered weapons or would you rather have a high-powered offensive line? Answer that question for me in the comment section, so I can see what you guys have to say about that. I'd be interested to see, because I really thought the Packers were still going to be really good, which they'll still probably make the playoffs, but I thought they were going to be really good. I wasn't worried about the weapons, and man, the weapons are those guys are just fucking awful. So yeah, some good matchups over the weekend, a couple meaningful games, got some teams on buys. But yeah, just hit me up in the comment section. I am now streaming my video game stuff on YouTube. Did a quick little stream the other day, so you guys will start seeing that popping up. Like, subscribe, drop in and say hi when I'm streaming. New Call of Duty comes out next week. I'm actually going to take the fucking day off from work so I can play it and do a pretty hefty stream and stuff like that when it first is able to go online. I'm going to get with the guys and see what's going on. I'm actually going to be putting out and I've done it on actual podcast episodes a while back. I've done some fight breakdowns, but for the major cards or any cards that I find enticing, I'm going to start doing fight breakdowns. So I got to put together my stuff for that, and hopefully Friday night I'm going to pump out my prediction for UFC 280. My predictions for all the fights and stuff, and what bets I'll be laying down and things of that nature. So it's going to be a good one. That's on at 10 a.m. Starts 10 a.m. in Abu Dhabi. Saturday morning. Main card's on at 2. Hopefully my bets land me some cash. I'm rooting for Charles Oliveira against Islam Makhachev for the 155-pound title. Yeah. If you guys enjoy this, like, subscribe, leave a comment. I appreciate all you guys' support. My views are starting to grow. Let's see if we can make it happen. As my boy Adam would say, let's make it happen, Captain. Later.